Hi guys. This one's gonna be super quick. I am not really up to much this week, and this was actually requested, so kind of as a bridge into conlangs. All this is gonna be is talking through how you pronounce different characters' names. A lot of my characters have names in languages which aren't pronounced as maybe people would instantly read them, especially the mortals. Levekia's atrocious for reading it as an English speaker, especially, and knowing how to say it. So I'm just going to go through some of them and basically break down how you actually say them, and use them to kind of give you an idea of how my different languages feel. I hope that this is interesting to some of you, and if it's not, I'll be back with more regularly scheduled conlang stuff next week. Okay, so let's start. The first major language group is Sune, which the Sunar speak, and this is the one that you'll probably see coming up a lot in my fics. I have quite a lot of Sunar characters, I think, who have already been in profiles or mentioned. So I'm gonna go through them. I'll put the name on screen and explain how you say it. So let's start with the big ones. Mikael is said like that. Mikael. It's not Michael. It's not Mikhail, some people say. It's Mikael, which is slightly different and weird to say at first, but that is how his name is said. His two Baidan, which is how you say that word, are Lian and Kai, whose name is short for Kaistofa. Their father is Alawin, who is at odds with Doyuan, who has a daughter, Kizen, and a former Baidan, Uokin. In Sunar, H's are very rarely pronounced if they're on their own. This is why in Treason, Lian, upon learning Mahik's name, can't say it, and instead says Maik. Another Sunar name that comes up a lot is... Another Sunar name that might come up is Andath's Sunar name, which is Ondatin, which is often shortened to Datin. Other names that you may or may not have heard yet, but which are again Sunar, are Liani, which is pretty similar to Lian, just with an E at the end, and there's reasons for that, and Vaimiana, who sometimes is known just as Vai. On the subject of Baidan, which I mentioned before, the words around Baum are Baum, Bai, and Baidan. The H's aren't quite pronounced, and it has a very rounded sound in the words. Some other Sunar names that are worth knowing are Adar, which is their word for their second soul, Kairin, which is the name for their capital city, and that's about it. The next language, which is worth looking at, is the Grey, which their names are fairly simple to pronounce. A lot of them are quite simple, but because they have multiple uses for Y's and A's, sometimes they have different sounds in the same word. The simplest of them is, for example, Andath, where they're both short A's, or Mahik, where although it's an E on the Y, it's still a fairly straightforward pronunciation. But I'm going to go into some of the other Grey names you'll hear, and we'll go through them. So, first for one thing that people have asked me for is, it's Ardinvad is the word that they have for their leader, or their previous leader, the ones who can carry children. And those who can inseminate are the Urdine. Most of the Grey you'll meet, obviously, in the Varandor will be Urdine, because they vastly outnumber the Ardinvads. But we're going to go through their names now, and hopefully you will at some point begin to remember some of them. People you've already met are Andath, Mahik, Raikund, Valind. We've also had something featuring Athand, pretty straightforward. One of the harder ones is Azrad, who uses two different types of A in his name. It's not Azrad, which I've seen some people call him. It is Azrad. Although it's cool if you don't say this right, because frankly half the characters in the story don't either. Some other characters you will hear mentioned are Chinad. Mahik is Mahik of Zathind. And I forgot Vithard. And Vithard, obviously. Vithard exists. Shit. Anyway, moving on. The next language is Liveki, which is the mortal tongue. This is one of the hardest to get, but I'm going to go through some now. The main thing is C's are not C's. K's are K's, but C's are a sound more like a T and a Z together. So if you've been calling them Davik, their name is actually Davits, and Gven's full name is Gvenica, not Gvenica. So Davits, Gvenica, Kravik is someone you'll come across, Avanya, Ida, Ilenia. There's also Rovko, obviously, who the A and the O kind of blend together into a Rov. You'll also come across Vadovko, who goes by Vadov, and Timovitz, who's the other librarian, and Danikov. They're all fairly hard names. It's based on a Slavic language, and actually I don't do it justice when I'm saying it. The other thing of note is the name of the city, Norhanyan, is broken down differently depending on how much the people like the city. If someone likes Norhanyan, they might put a pause between Nor and Hanyan. If someone doesn't like it, they might put a pause between Ha and Nyen. So Avanya calls it Norhanyan, whereas Rovko calls it Norhanyen. Okay. The last main language, which is hard to pronounce, is Folk, which isn't super hard to pronounce, but it has some weird letters in it. Mainly it has the A and the E connected, which is just pronounced as a hard E. So Sinan's name is Sinan, not Canaan, which I've seen some people call him. Sinan would be how it's pronounced in his own tongue. His father is Firwin, his mother is Caris. You've also met Galana, who's known as Gale. Falna exists. Bordig is another name from her crew, and so on and so forth. Folk names aren't super hard to get around once you've got the hang of the fact that C's tend to be soft, but not always, and the AE is just E. As opposed to in Suna with Mikael, where the A and the E are pronounced separately. And Detheld exists. I forgot Detheld and Vithard. The saddest ship. So this has just been kind of a very minorly edited vlog with like some words and names. I'll do some actual phrases as we're going through conlangs, but these are some of the big ones that people have asked me about. I just want to finish, I guess, with the pronunciation of the threads and some of the locations. So the Varandor is called the Varandor, broken into the Varan and also into Dorun, which is the islands. Kyrene, Norhanyan, the Citadel is just the Citadel, but it's in Mount Eneray, which is named after an old god character who you may have seen in a fic. In terms of the threads, there are 6 of them. Oh, I forgot Velek too. God, I have too many characters. In terms of the threads, there are 6 of them, and their names are Arven, Viadin, Voktena, Devanavin, Lucien, and Kaizin Kaizan, who has my favourite name to say, and his name isn't actually anything of those languages. His name is from a precursor to Sunar, known just as Ancient. The others are Arven is death. You've met Lady Arven and her sons. Voktena is actually Darvitz's official thread name as time. Viadin is wisdom. Lucien is fate and doesn't really have a proper thread name because it's kind of bad luck to give her one. So Lucien is just the name she decided she liked the sound of. Devanavin is heart and goes by Vano, and is pretty much the only thread other than Arven to just straight up use their thread name as their name. And Kaizin Kaizan is just his name, and was his name before he became a thread, and it stuck. So he's a weird example where there isn't a word for closure that he uses. The word for closure is his name, which now means closure in casual conversation. You may have seen that the mortals, for example, in Leveki have different words for the different threads. The main one is Kazanov, is Kaizin's name in their tongue. Again, when I'm going further into conlangs, I'll look at how these different words came about and what the differences are. But yeah, sometimes you'll see a word which is slightly off the original thread, and that's where it's been translated. But because these are names, they're often translated to keep the sound the same, even though they all originate in Sunar, instead of keeping the meaning the same. A bit like Kaizin, a lot of their names in Sunar have become the words for those things in other languages, and we'll look at that as we go. But yeah, I hope this has been interesting. It's just some rough pronunciation stuff. There's like no backing music or anything, and this is super rough. I'm having a hard time at the moment, so thank you for bearing with me in terms of like this good quality content, but I'll be back on track next week to give you something a bit fuller. So yeah, I will see you around later.